Following is an AZPM original production.
Arizona Science is supported by Research Corporation for Science Advancement.
For Arizona Public Media, I'm Tim Swindle, Professor Emeritus of Planetary Science at the University of Arizona, and this is Arizona Science. Joining me today is Goggy Davidowitz, a professor and University Distinguished Scholar of Entomology at the University of Arizona. Welcome, Goggy.
Thank you.
Goggy, you've developed a solar-based system to dry produce that you're now commercializing. Could you explain a little bit about how the system works?
The system itself is effectively a greenhouse standing on its end. So it's about 12 feet by 12 feet footprint and 25 feet tall. In the United States, about 40% of all the food that is produced ends up in the landfill. After all of the effort that's put in to grow it, to water it, to harvest it, to package it, it all ends up in the landfill. The idea with the solar tower is to capture that while it's still good, fresh, and edible, and dry it down, and then before it rots. And then if you dry it, you can store it and ship it. And then you can use that as ingredients in food or ingredients in livestock feed.
So how does this tower actually work?
So drying of produce, of food, has been around for millennia. I mean, literally thousands of years, people have been drying food, mostly by just putting it in the sun and letting it dry. And there are more modern, current greenhouse-type facilities that do this using solar radiation, but they're typically small. So they can handle the volume of a family, let's say, or something like that. And the produce is spread out in a single layer on tables or on the ground. What we're doing is we're going up. And because of that, we create this thermal gradient inside the tower. So solar radiation comes through the walls, the semi-transparent walls of the tower. The thermal gradient is about 40 degrees centigrade, or about 104 degrees hotter inside than it is outside, and it's 25 degrees hotter centigrade at the bottom than it is at the top. At the top, it's about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. We then use that thermal gradient to our advantage to dry the produce. So what normally would take days, we can do in hours.
So you put in a batch of produce and a few hours later it's done?
Right. So lettuce, for example, takes us about an hour, hour and a half. Things like potatoes, squash, carrots, oranges, takes us between 3 and 6 hours, depending on the cloudy conditions and so on.
A solar drying tower sounds like it makes a lot of sense in Arizona, but what about other climates where it may not be as much sunlight, it may not be as long a day, that sort of thing?
Great question. We've already collected data to show that we can dry year-round, including in December, January in Arizona. But also we have designs, and we're working with another group to put in heat sinks that will allow us to continue the drying through the night. When we dry it down, for every ton we dry, we can get back about 950 liters. It's almost a cubic yard of fresh, good quality drinking water back. And then that water could be used for drinking, for irrigation. And the advantage of that is twofold. One, fresh drinking water is a declining resource in the world. So we can at least capture some of that back. But perhaps equally importantly is the shipping costs. Whether by weight or by volume, it's the same thing. The shipping costs are reduced by 95%.
You're listening to Arizona Science. I'm Tim Swindle, and we're continuing our conversation with Goggy Davidowitz, a professor of entomology at the University of Arizona who has developed a solar tower to rapidly and efficiently dry produce. Who do you anticipate your customers will be?
There's two parts to this. So before it goes into the tower, some possible customers could be the distributors that need to pay transportation costs and tipping fees to send it to the landfill. It could be municipalities who, if we dry the fruits and vegetables, we can reduce the volume by 95%. So that's a huge saving. Even if it goes to the landfill, it's only 5% of the initial volume. On the other side, after it comes out, those would be the food industry that's looking for ingredients, dried tomatoes, dried cucumbers, dried mango, dried whatever, and livestock feed companies.
Have you had customers buying these yet, or are you still getting things set up?
We have not. So the solar tower itself was built on university funds from the Provost Investment Fund and it became operational about 2 years ago. We've been doing some preliminary research on this. Tech Launch Arizona commercialized it to a startup company, Quairu, only about 4 weeks ago. And Quairu is in the stages of developing a pitch and finding first customers and so on.
Have you had customers buying these yet, or are you still getting things set up?
The research prototype that we have at the Campus Agricultural Center was built about 2 years ago from Provost Investment Funds. We've been doing initial research on that. Tech Launch Arizona recently licensed the technology. We have a patent on it. Licensed the technology to a startup company called Quairu, and they are at the early stages of finding first customers and how to pitch it and so on.
Goggy, you're actually an entomologist with an expertise in studying insects. How did you get interested in these food sustainability projects?
That's a good one. So in around 2017, I became interested in edible insects. So my expertise in physiology, insect physiology, is on changes in the environment affect insect growth and development. So it's kind of a natural step then to get into the whole world of edible insects for food and for feed. It's a growing industry. There's a lot of interest in this worldwide, including in the United States. So I thought I can contribute to that. The issue is back then, when this kind of industry started in the United States, the insect production facilities were using human-grade food to feed the insects, to make human-grade insects. So growing insects to solve the issue of feeding the growing human population, using human-grade food to grow the insects didn't make a lot of sense to me. So the alternative I came to was using food waste. And given that we're very close to Nogales and the port of entry, where there's, I think it's 1.7 billion pounds of fresh produce comes into the United States yearly. So there's a lot, and there's about 300 million of that is thrown into the landfill.
And you've had other ventures into food sustainability as well. I saw where you've worked on a system with multiple organisms where the waste products of any one food type is repurposed as a resource for another. Could you describe that? Yeah,
this is, it's a system we called MISIS. It stands for Modular Integrated Sustainable Agricultural Systems. Typically, when you're growing produce, you're growing one crop, right? You have a field of tomatoes, a field of cucumbers. We're trying to come up with a system that is controlled environment agriculture. In other words, it's indoors or in containers. It can grow food year-round, including in the winter, but produces a more balanced diet. So we have 4 initial crops that we're working with, fish, mushrooms, insects, and plants. And we designed it in such a way that each one of these crops produces waste. And we capture that waste and then use it as a resource for another one of these crops. So it's a circular system, produces almost no waste by itself, but it produces a balanced diet. And it can produce it in cities, on Mars, wherever.
And is this another one that you're thinking about commercializing?
Probably not. There's a lot of us involved. Each of the subsets of these systems, people have been doing this for decades, so there's nothing new there. The integration and the AI control software will be probably commercializable, but growing the crops themselves is nothing new that we've come up with. It's the integration that's the hard part.
Our guest today has been Goggy Davidowitz, who has developed a solar drying tower to efficiently dry produce that might otherwise go to waste. This is Tim Swindle, and you have been listening to Arizona Science. You can hear more of this conversation and others on our Arizona Science segments by going to the AZPM podcast at azpm.org.
Thank you to Research Corporation for Science Advancement for their support of Arizona Science. AZPM podcasts are made possible in part by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.